Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can always read my work on ESPN.com. And don't forget, on Saturday morning, I'll put up my 5 things I think. It's all stuff that I've learned throughout the week, things that can get you ready for Sunday's game against the Ravens, but also just some more insight into the team and certain things that are going on. It's not all about Sunday's game. It's a lot about what I've learned throughout the week, that some of which applies to Sunday's game, some of which just applies to 4-game winning streak in general. So, that'll be up Saturday morning. So look for that and give it a listen, folks. Anyway, today I'm joined by ESPN's Jamison Hensley as we discuss the Ravens-Commanders game, a big matchup, just because it's a regional matchup, right? And it's the two best offenses in the NFL right now. So it makes it a very fun, intriguing matchup. So Jamison and I talked about some of the obvious, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, but also just like the battle for some of the territories in Maryland that Baltimore has creeped into and overtaken over the years. And my question would be, and we'll see what happens, but with the better Jayden Daniels is, the more popular he becomes, the more popular this team becomes, the more interesting everything else gets. It could be a fun decade here in this region with these quarterbacks for sure. Anyways, Jamison gets you ready for all that. I really don't have anything else to say. There's not a whole lot to report from practice from Thursday. Brian Robinson did not practice again. We'll get an update on Friday, so pay attention to I'm sure I'll have a story on ESPN about his status, especially if he's ruled out. I don't know that's going to be the case. I just know he hasn't practiced. So I have seen him walking around the locker room, but that doesn't mean anything. We'll have a chance, hopefully, to talk to him on Friday and just get a feel for what's up. So that will be part of the Saturday podcast. But also, if there's any story to be updated, you can check it on Twitter. You can check it on ESPN.com. So also, and then one little note: Sam Hartman was waived on Thursday. The intent would be to bring him back and put him on the practice squad. For people wondering why, well, you don't keep 4 quarterbacks on the active roster. So that's why they ended up waiving him. They didn't need him on there. And what it likely means is they're going to clear a spot for a guy like a Jordan McGee or an F.A. Obata, somebody coming off that IR who perhaps is ready to go and can help this team right now. And so the idea is to get Hartman back on the practice squad. I think they'd like to keep him around. And listen, I know he's a really good friend of Jayden Daniels as well. So anyways, that's all I got for you right now. So here's my conversation with ESPN's Jamison Hensley talking Ravens Commanders. Well, Jamison, we have to start with the quarterbacks in this matchup, and Lamar Jackson coming off kind of an incredible game, another one. How well is he playing, and do you see a difference in his game this year?
Yeah, with Lamar, it's always fascinating because it's like you always think, oh well, he's done so many of these different dynamic plays, and then he has another one in Cincinnati where for 8 seconds he drops a fumble, picks it up from his knees, stiffs arms a 265-pound defensive end, and then when another linebacker is sticking his helmet into Lamar's chest, Lamar somehow throws the ball downfield for a 6-yard touchdown. It's just incredible. I mean, he just does things that you've just never seen in a football game before. And I will say that over the years, and the Ravens even said that, even when he was in his 2019 NFL MVP season, they're like, there is going to be a maturity with him. There's going to be changes in his game. He's going to run less and throw more. And you've seen that, especially last year, a little bit more. But this year early, with the Ravens running game still doing so well, and that when they go heavy with 2 tight ends and also Patrick Ricard, their identity has been more running the ball, which meant Derrick Henry and Lamar. And I think Lamar's running the ball a little bit more than they have ever even envisioned at this point in his career. But him throwing the ball, just his ability to escape pressure, and when they go into these scramble drills, that's when he's at his best. I mean, he's good in the pocket. He can do the on-time rhythm throws, but he's still at his best when things kind of break down a little bit. He's running a little bit, and the receivers all understand, he's going to keep the play alive, so they just don't stand still. So still, I think the off script is kind of his strength, but he can still do so many other things, and I think that's what's so tough to defend him. Is just he can do things that other quarterbacks can do, but it's the intangibles, and it's just when that happens, you might do everything perfect as a defense, but he can still beat you.
And it's funny because I'm starting to see that. I am seeing that in Washington. Now, I don't want to go down there. Jaden Daniels has a ways to go to get to the success that Lamar Jackson has had, but it's the ability to extend plays and be a weapon with your legs that makes him unique and different, because he made a couple plays against the Browns like that. So, but how, as a passer, even on the move, has he improved even in that way with throwing the ball? And how has he developed in that area?
Yeah, he's really good at more of the intermediate throws. There are times where he will struggle with accuracy here and there. A couple times in Cincinnati, there are guys wide open in the flat, and he overthrows them or throws behind them. So that's still part of the game that he wants to get better. And even the deep throws, there are times when he can hit guys on those passes that go 20 yards in the air. But that's not, he's not consistent enough in there. It's really more of the intermediate throws where he can get the ball to Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Isaiah Likely. Not as much with Mark Andrews, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But he hits those guys when they're open. Lamar just sees the field. The Ravens have always talked about that he sees the field just so differently than a lot of quarterbacks, that he almost has this, he can just, it's not, okay, go through these kind of, different progressions. He just has a feel for the spacing and when guys are open to deliver the ball. And that's kind of been, his strength over the years. And he's just gotten better at, again, the 5 to 10 to 15 yards. That's kind of his sweet spot, especially in between the numbers or Zay Flowers along the sideline. But that's where, and you can see his completion percentage continue to get better and better and better every year. And I think he's kind of getting a feel of what throws just works for him also better. So I think it's just kind of that progression with him. But he should keep getting, as far as the accuracy, the completion percentage just keeps going up and up and up.
It's funny too with him, because like one of the things with Jaden, they're talking about wanting to keep his eyes up as he runs, right? Keep your eyes downfield because you got big plays available. Is that something that Lamar had to learn early? And when does that, was an time where it just hit for him, where it's like he's doing that more and more because you see those big plays?
Yeah, and I think Lamar's always kind of looked around, and it was always kind of funny where people kept talking early on of, oh, well, Lamar shouldn't run the ball as much because he's going to get hit and he's going to get hurt. And the Ravens were like, no, they want him to run the ball, and because he can see. So if he's just totally looking downfield and locked downfield, throwing the ball, they're more worried about him getting blindsided hit in the pocket than him just going and scrambling. When he's scrambling, he's looking all over the field, including downfield. The biggest thing for Lamar was, in 2018, 2019, maybe a little bit in 2020, when initially, if he didn't see or feel like anybody was open immediately, he took off. Now, year by year by year, he's waiting a little bit more. And instead of maybe getting out of the pocket and just taking off to run for 5-6 yards, he's now holding back a little bit more. Some might even say he holds back probably more than he should, and waits to see if somebody is downfield. He's more patient as far as waiting for guys to get open now than he was in the past, to the point where you're like, well, why isn't he? He has a lane. Let's just, he should go, but he still is a little bit more. I think the pendulum has swung to where he's more patient than he probably should be now, where early in the career, maybe he was more impatient than he probably should be.
That makes sense. How surprised are you that we're now going to be covering a game where it's possibly the two best offenses in the league right now?
It's incredible. because I was kind of looking up, and back the last time Washington came to Baltimore to play a game for real, not the preseason, like an actual regular season game, was back in 2016. And not only did the football team have the football team you're covering have a different name, but I mean, you look at both teams and just the personalities have just totally changed. I mean, you go from Kirk Cousins versus Joe Flacco game, where and I think the Washington won 16-10
Yeah.
that day, and both offenses combined for 2 touchdowns. The Ravens had one offensive touchdown, and the Washington had one offensive touchdown. I think Washington also had like a punt return. It was a special teams touchdown. But anyway, it was 2 total offensive touchdowns. And John, I mean, we didn't see that in the first half of the first quarter. They might score 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So I mean, it should be an exciting game. And I'm honestly, if it's not the best game of the week, it's going to be the most exciting game.
Oh, for sure. And the funny thing is too, is we know, like we were talking about this yesterday, but the bleeding of the fan bases especially in Maryland, and obviously there are a lot of number 8 jerseys, and I've just got to believe like you're going to see a lot of kids now starting to wear number 5 jerseys, and there's going to be this little battle between these teams for sections of Maryland for the fan base, which is just funny to think that.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, for the first time, and the Ravens have always been a very successful franchise ever since their 4th year of existence. They won a Super Bowl, but when you're winning with defensive players, you will see some fans wearing the Ray Lewis 52 or the Ed Reed 20, but for mainstream fans, the fans that you're trying to grow your brand, that's not a real successful formula. Is going, look, come on out. You want to see a 10-3 game, that's what you want to, but that's pretty exciting, isn't it? It all changed with Lamar. And when you have a player that dynamic who you can say, watch this team and you'll see things you've never seen before because of the quarterback. That creates excitement, and and believe me, there are more Ravens fans not only in this area but nationally than the Ravens have ever been. And I think the big challenge for the Ravens is at some point number 8's not going to be there, and can you hold on to the fans nationally that you brought in because of Lamar? Or it's almost kind of the NBA where you have fans of players more than fans of teams.
Right.
And you wonder if that's going to be an NFL, that will cross over to NFL because you have players just so dynamic that you might be like, I'm a Lamar Jackson fan. I'm not a Ravens fan. I'm a Lamar Jackson fan. But I do think when you have exciting play and you have a quarterback that just, is so creative, and again, with the unscripted that is so unpredictable in what he can do, I think that just helps your brand and can help you really not only nationally but regionally as well, especially for a Baltimore franchise that can't go too far. You can't go too far north, west, or south without really running into a team. So that's always been a challenge for the Ravens.
And I think these guys are in the infancy of growing that brand with Jaden Daniels. And it'll be interesting to see, because if that new stadium gets built in Maryland, again, like there's going to be money that they're pushing for that could be affected by like, hey, Jaden Daniels is awesome, and look at what he's doing here, and so pour money over here.
Right.
Like it's going to, I think there's always been that quote unquote Beltway battle, which is always kind of silly, but it could be more and more later just because of these quarterbacks and just the popularity of what both these players and now Jaden Daniels can do for these franchises.
Yeah, and I, the battle it would be a little bit more of a rivalry if they could meet more than every 4 years.
Right, of course,
right. But it is. I mean, it is something where, especially the teams, they know that it's more of I think a battle between more of the franchises themselves than the teams.
Correct.
But it will. I mean, it's I think games like this will help. And you will hear a lot of people that work along, whether it's Howard County, Montgomery County, Anne Arundel County, on Monday. There will be a lot of fans that are happy and a lot of fans that are not happy, and they'll tell each other. There'll be a lot of
Okay,
trash
so
talk kind of in those border counties.
yeah, no, and that's fun. I think that's a lot of fun. That's what Jay Dale's done here. Let's talk about the rest of the offense. Derrick Henry, what's he meant to this team?
Uh, and the Ravens brought him in, and they knew he was going to bring at least stability to that running game. They've always had some really flashy runners, whether it was J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, but with those with Derrick Henry, they know he's going to be durable, and that's something that they just needed. There's a lot of questions where, I mean, this is a 30-year-old running back. Why are you signing a 30-year-old running back? That's the point where they decline. There was a little bit of a faith that they're bringing in Derrick just because he's been so productive over the past 5 or 6 years, and just the consistency level of that. But he has exceeded expectations. I remember the first 2 games where they didn't really find their how to click with Derrick Henry. And I remember we were asking Harbaugh, like, Derrick Henry's he's not getting about 10 carries a game. Shouldn't he be getting more? And Harbaugh's like, well, we didn't bring him in to be a 20 carry a game type running back, but now ever since then he's kind of been that guy. And Derrick Henry always talks about he's never been in an offense before where he's not been the focal point.
Right.
Now he's there, and everyone's looking at Lamar, and Derek's like, "This is great." Everyone's kind of focused on him, not me, and that's just that has helped him. And even in this last Sunday in Cincinnati, he was held in check for the pretty much 4 quarters. But then when they get into overtime, he breaks a 51-yard run to set up the game-winning field goal. So I think the Ravens, and I think he hit 21 miles per hour on that run. He just, the way he takes care of his body, and he's just a player that I think I thought he might just be a 1 year like stopgap, because he was on a 2-year deal, but those 2-year deals, it might just turn into one. Now I think there's no way it's just going to be a 1 year arrangement with Derrick Henry.
This is not Zeke Elliott going back to Dallas, for
No.
sure. Zay Flowers.
Yeah, with Zay, I thought he was definitely going to be the number 1 wide receiver, just because of the Ravens, their profile, and it's not going to be that way every game. Their profile is still going to be more, let's just run the ball, control it. But in games when it becomes a shootout, like it did against the Bengals, that's where the guy like Zay Flowers is going to shine, and he knows how to get open. They've tried to do the quick hitters where, as soon as Lamar gets the ball, just throw it out to the side, kind of almost like a wide receiver screen. He hasn't really factored into that. That's kind of not, I think, one of his strengths. His is more going across, doing those crosses or the outs along the sideline. He's just so quick. And so I think he has to get a little bit better as far as the yards after the catch. Probably not there as much as the Ravens would hope. But I think that it's the second year in the league. But for years, the Ravens have tried to draft a wide receiver who could be their number 1 guy. But this is a team that's always had to go and get the older receiver, whether it was Steve Smith, Derek Mason, Anquan Bolden. But I think this time they finally hit. I think Zay Flowers is going to be their number 1 wide receiver, whether it develops into this year, but definitely next year.
So the one thing people aren't used to seeing is a defense that's struggling at times. And I know they lost McDonald, they lost Anthony Weaver from that staff. What is going, and is it mostly the pass defense that's been the issue here?
Yeah, the secondary, and the one other assistant coach that they lost was Denard Wilson, who was their secondary coach. He's now the defensive coordinator with the Titans.
Right.
And if I'm not, I think the Titans' pass defense is pretty good this year too. But Denard was so good as far as getting these guys on the same page, and I think they're really missing him. And because essentially, when you look back there, they have Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Stevens as the starting corners. They have Kyle Hamilton, who is incredible as safety. Marcus Williams was a high-priced free agent addition at the other safety. But this is the same group that was together last year, and they had the 6th fewest passing yards allowed. So they've gone from being the 6th best pass defense to now being one of the worst. And so um, they have to figure out things as far as they believe their coverage is decent, but it's those 5 or 6 times where there's a miscommunication and a guy's just running behind the defense, wide open. And so this is a defense that has allowed the most big plays in the passing game in the NFL, and they've never expected something like this. But still, I think a lot of it does come down to communication and getting on the same page.
Pass rush, run defense. How's that?
Yeah, pass rush, pretty good. Where Kyle Van Noy, they re-signed, and everyone's like, yeah, that whatever. It was not a fanfare.
Right.
There was no Kyle Van Noy press conference when they re-signed Kyle Van Noy. But he has 6 sacks this year, and he's just such a hard worker as far as out there. He's so much is done with effort with him out there. Odafe Owe on the other side can really, and then Nnamdi Madubuike. It used to be Justin Madubuike, but he's going back to his Nigerian name, Nnamdi Madubuike. Always big pressure up the middle, and this is a guy that they made one of the highest paid defensive tackles this offseason. So he's really good pushing the pocket. And then as far as run defense, it's hard to tell about this run defense because teams just pass the ball. I mean, they throw the ball because they know that the Ravens really can't stop. They can't stop it. So why even try to run the ball? It was kind of comical against the Cincinnati Bengals, where towards the end of the game, when you're thinking the Bengals should be running the ball to run clock, they're throwing the ball. They don't have to be conservative.
Although they were in that overtime, I bet they wish they were. So
hey,
that's one way.
I think Joe Burrow talked about how he checked out of it a little bit, but yeah, they should have remained aggressive because the Ravens, other than for one drive where Marlon Humphrey came up with the big interception, other than that, they threw the ball at will.
Well, it should be a fun one Sunday. I'm looking forward to watching this one. Just again, watching these two quarterbacks do what they do. It at least, I mean, you've been watching it. This is new for us. I haven't, in fairness, I've only covered the team for 30 years, so I shouldn't expect to see a good offense, maybe every 25 years or so, but we're seeing it now and should be fun Sunday. So thanks a lot, Jamison.
Thanks a lot, John.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Jamison for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Saturday with another episode with the 5 things I think, preparing you for the Ravens-Commanders game, and also just trying to give you more insight into the Commanders. I'll talk to you next time.